So, but we'll get there when we get to neuro. We could talk about ER first. I mean,
Yeah.
I liked endocrine. I think it's pretty straightforward. You can use lost my train of thought with the chat over here.
I'll touch on it really quickly.
Endocrine was straightforward. Sorry,
Yeah.
I liked first aid for endocrine. Kind of get
Yes.
the pathways
Oh
down.
my God. First
Yeah,
aid
for
for
sure.
endocrine. One of the biggest reasons why is for endocrine, the diseases are so close together.
Yeah.
Close together in presentation. And they don't really put them side by side in the lectures. And so when I went through first aid, I was like, okay, I can finally like organize my thoughts here. And this is super important, guys. The acronyms for thyroid hormone, cortisol, and growth hormone, know those by heart because they will ask so many questions and you have to know. So it's like cortisol, it was like the 6 C's or something like that. And
I'm gonna pull it up.
Thyroid hormone was one, but they will hit on that and you have to know it. The second messenger system, there's a really good mnemonic in first aid for that.
Yeah, Dr. Chipilla is going to go through that. They'll use the G protein or the G coupling, and they'll talk about them in all the different different hormones. But so you obviously know if they're going to go through it in every lecture for the different ones, it's testable. But there's like a really easy mnemonic in first aid.
Oh, and if you didn't understand receptors in term 1, you'll probably understand it in term 2. At least I understood receptors like 100 times better after going through it in term 2 because it applies it better than in term 1. So I finally understood it and I was doing an AEP session and I was like, oh my God, it just clicked for me. Like I memorized it for the FTM exam, but then they like taught it for term 2. I was like, oh, this makes sense now. So
I'm going to post all my additional resources. By the time we all get started and we do the first PLG, I'll have all of the additional resources and everything posted for you guys with my notes and everything. So, but yeah, so yeah, for endocrine, a lot of good stuff in first aid, a lot of good mnemonics you'll be able to use. So that'll be good. Anybody have any?
I think is actually pretty easy to get down very quickly. There's not a lot of tricky stuff about it. I mean, you have to memorize it. There's a lot of nitty-gritty details and there are a lot of stuff that are really similar to each other. But I think it's easier to get that stuff down pretty quickly. Repro stuff, some of the graphs with that's where I had a little issue. I don't know about you, Brady.
I'll never understand women. So the menstrual cycle just blows my mind. I don't get it. I'm just kidding. No, I'm not. But I found the histology for repro like pretty rough just because a lot of it's super similar with like the oocyte and all that nonsense that like the different phases of the development of the follicle. Yeah, that was rough, but it wasn't highly tested. There was like a couple of questions, but that's what I found difficult for reproduction. Anatomy was straightforward.
Changes during pregnancy, I found that a little difficult because there are a lot.
Yeah.
It was a pretty dense lecture, but it's a DLA, I think, and I couldn't really figure out what I really needed to know. But there's a lot of like changes in pregnancy stuff in there with respect to enlargement of certain hormonal organs and different things along that line. And you need to know that because hormones, not just like your what you think of as like testosterone, estrogen, all that stuff. I'm talking in like thyroid hormone, prolactin, all of that stuff can change during pregnancy. And so they want you to know, like, does it increase, does it decrease, and all of that stuff.
I'm looking at my old notes right now. Let's see what else there was there.
I will say the first few lectures of endocrine, I actually think this is true for every single module, are a little more of an introduction than they are like big conceptual testable things. And so if you want to do something over the next few days, I would go through the first few lectures and kind of see what they're talking about, and then kind of, yeah, that's what I would do, because it's more of an introduction than it is like really big information. The Ninja Nerd videos, some of them completely explain some lectures. For example, thyroid hormone, thyroid hormone, all like T3, T4, the metabolism of it. I watched the video on Ninja Nerds, and it completely explained it in amazing detail, 2 lectures, 2 whole SGU lectures. And I went through the SGU lectures just to make sure I wasn't missing anything. I was like, oh, I know this is easy. And so I found that for ER especially, a lot of the Ninja Nerds videos went over a bunch of stuff, and I could just go to the SGU lectures and it just made sense, and it hit it really well.
Here, let me, I have my condensed test notes. I'm gonna just pull it up real quick.
That was like, you will have stuff, but it's not a whole lot of points on it. So you'll have 2 to 3 questions per lecture towards the end of the module. So you need to know the difference between type 1 and type 2 diabetes. You need to know the difference between kwashiorkors and Hashimoto.
Erasmus.
Yeah, marasmus, that's what it is. Yeah. That's one of the ones right before the exam.
Yeah, so like identifying, at least for endocrine, like identifying like, because whether it's a primary disorder or secondary, primary meaning it's like in the organ, like if it's an adrenal problem, it originates in the organ, versus secondary, it could originate in the pituitary gland. They could have similar effects, right? There's similar downstream effects, but identifying the differences, a lot of times the lab values, the testing that they do will differentiate the problem. So I put this up. So like a lot of the endocrine, one of the things people didn't like, and I didn't, it's kind of difficult. Let's see, I have it here. Oh, this pathway, it didn't print very well or copy very well. But the adrenal steroids, you want to make sure you know these, the congenital adrenal hyperplasia. We'll go through it in PLGs and stuff. But this was something people found difficult, but there are some easy ways to do it. So I think, yeah, this is covered in endocrine. This was that mnemonic. We were saying when you go through it, if y'all have looked at it, they talk about like which ones use CAMP, which different hormones use CAMP versus the IP3 pathway. So like these are really easy little mnemonics, but I'll post all these for you guys. We don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but these were just kind of my quick notes for stuff. I'm trying to see what else. Yeah, a lot of the stuff in red are like enzymes or little mnemonics that I was able to use.
Enzymes and cofactors and vitamins, yeah. You need to know all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's super.
But yeah, a lot of good mnemonics that you'll be able to use. I don't know if it's worth really diving into neuro or stuff yet, but
we'll have plenty of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, ER, I thought, and some people might not agree with me, I think ER is the easiest place to kick some ass. Honestly.
Yeah, it's a good way to start out fast, start out with a good grade.
Because DM is so long. It's 4 or 5 weeks worth of lectures on one exam. And by the end of DM, I honestly felt like my brain could not absorb any more information. And I felt like if I went back to like the histo lectures, I'm like, I don't even remember learning this, and I would have to relearn it. And so kick some ass on ER so that when you do get to EM and you are getting bogged down, you're not stressing yourself out with, oh my God, I have to get like a high A on this thing, because it is a hard exam.
I can say for DM, like there's so many pathways that I know some people like drawing them out and knowing every enzyme, but like I didn't do that. I only, if it was a disease oriented enzyme, you know, or like a rate limiting enzyme, I would memorize it. But like, as for like, I couldn't whiteboard or draw out all the pathways. There's just too much. Like maybe glycolysis in the TCA cycle, I could do that. But
And
as for like ketones and stuff, like I just memorized the rate limiting enzymes and like I did fine. So
there were so many questions on DM where you had to identify the pathway based on the enzyme, or they would give you the pathway and be like, which one of these enzymes is involved. And all the enzymes that they give you, they're going to be important or rate limiting enzymes in that thing. And so if you get to the point where you can look at an enzyme and know, oh, that's that pathway, you're getting good. You're sitting pretty for the exam, because that's how they're going to do it. It's not those one like tiny ones in between important steps. They want to know the important steps, because of course those important steps are where things can go wrong. They're also the regulated steps. So, you know, if there's an excess or of ATP, what's going to happen here? An excess of glucose, what's going to happen here? And so that's what they really care about with.
it's like, how do you ask a clinical question about an enzyme that doesn't matter? You know what I mean? Like they want to know about the stuff that you could tag a drug to and like inhibit it and stuff. See, Anna did ask a question about BSC prep. So obviously the sooner you get into it, the better. I think Lindsey and I both did well because we taught last term, but I did talk to people that said like they just used my reviews for term 1 and they did really well. So like that plus questions, like you should be fine. So a lot of people went ahead with that. So if you feel comfortable with that, it's probably even more than you need, but if you can get through that, I imagine you'd be okay. So the sooner you start, the better. A lot of people do like 5-6 weeks out, but because the last neuro exam is pretty light, it's mostly psych and it's pretty straightforward. So you could do it that way. But if you do a little bit as you go, I know that's, you know, asking a lot under the circumstances, but you know, it'd be terrible to like have to get a really good grade on neuro and want to focus on that, and then you have to start BSC and you don't know where to go. So yeah, you could just go with that.
And you said it's a little bit of everything, or do you think it focused more on certain topics? Sorry, I'm wearing a mask, if you can hear me.
No, you're fine.
Okay.
Oh my god. So
I thought it was heavy term 2, actually.
it was so heavy term 2. Like there was hardly any term 1 stuff on there. I think the only term 1 stuff was like a few MSK questions, which annoyed me because
and no drugs.
Exam. Oh yeah, no drugs.
No drugs.
The NBME exam for BSCE, which is how it's done on campus, is they like they like the biochem stuff. They like the term 1 like replication and all of those things that are like basic sciences. And since we're doing it with SGU exams, I was very annoyed at the BSCE because I focused on what people told me that historically the NBME focuses on, and there was so much neuro on the BSCE.
Yeah, there was, which works out good. I mean, you just did it.
Yeah.
So.
But I was annoyed because I was studying all this term 1 stuff and it didn't show up on the BSCE.
And I mean, take that with a grain of salt, because y'all's could be completely different.
Absolute
so that doesn't mean like don't prep with term 1 stuff.
I actually really have gotten into osmosis videos. So I don't know if any of you guys subscribe to osmosis. I think their videos are awesome. They're animated, they're short, they go over the high yield stuff. It makes sense. Like some of the stuff for term 2, it made a little more sense going over that. And then I went over a bunch of osmosis videos studying for BSCE. I have osmosis and physio, actually. So osmosis I do if I just want a quick review over something, if I want it drawn out and animated. Physio I'll do if I want a little more lecture coming at me. But I mean, I love both of those platforms, but I'll sit there with an osmosis playlist over something and just go through stuff, and it helps me a lot.
Did y'all have any specific questions y'all could talk?
Yeah, turn your cameras on. We all look like a mess.
I do have a question. In
Yeah.
regards to small group, do we stay in our same small group or are they going to switch us?
They'll probably switch you.
Yeah, I think they're
They
different.
will switch you.
Yeah,
It's
my main
unfortunate.
question was gonna be more about BSCE, but because I didn't really do, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't do Sarah, I'll turn my. I did not do a lot of prep over break. I actually had a facilitator tell me to not like do much over break, like to take that time to relax for
Yeah.
once.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm kind of stressed that I didn't, but like, should I with the
Don't stress.
I didn't do anything. Don't worry
Yeah,
about
I
it.
didn't do anything over break. I still didn't do anything over break, like prepping for term 3. Everyone was like, buy this book and memorize it before you even get to term 4. I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. When you get closer to term 5 and closer to step, then I think that's when I'll really start like doing stuff regularly during my breaks. But term 1 and 2, no, don't feel bad if you don't do stuff, because you really got to conserve your energy, honestly. But BSCE, if you don't start on day 1, don't feel guilty about it. Plenty of people didn't start until about a few weeks before, and they did fine. If you are doing AAP and PLG groups, that helped me a lot, because there were like, people would message me with like a practice question or something that they were confused on. And I got a couple questions right on the BSCE because of that, because I looked at something so intensely to answer this question. And I was like, oh yeah, I got that right. You're also not going to be able to learn everything just because it's so much information.
But the teachers understand that. Like,
Yeah,
it's not,
they
the
know that.
BSC is not as detailed as your normal test. So, you
Yeah,
know, if that puts you a little at ease, you know, it's pretty straightforward. It's like disease oriented, which is what it
Yeah.
should be, right? Like, you'll get a Marfan question on there and you sure
I
are gonna
feel
get
like
it right.
they were pretty good about like cumulative for the most part. Let's say they did have like a very intense, very specific, but most of the cumulative for term 1, I felt like it was not as bad as I thought it was. Like, I never studied for the cumulative, right?
Yeah. I never
Yeah.
studied for the cumulative stuff. Cumulative questions are usually pretty basic.
You could think of it like that, like those cumulative questions, yeah. So as long as you put your eyes on it, you should be good to go. Yeah. I would definitely like when you get closer, like not only term 1 stuff, but like the ER, maybe go back and look at ER a little bit in DM too, because I tended to forget some of that stuff because it was so much. Even though it seemed more recent, there was a lot of stuff on there, more than term 1, for sure.
Yeah.
But keep it clinical if that's the
Yeah.
if that's the idea, you know. If anything, just memorize that. But we didn't have any drugs. I went through the drugs and there was like not one drug question on the whole test.
Nope.
Like a beta blocker question or something.
I will say for DM histo, it keeps coming back on every single exam in term 2.
Small intestine.
I don't know
is the
why.
answer.
I don't know why they love the intestine histo, but they
Yeah.
asked a question on every single exam, including the BSCE.
Yeah. What else? Do y'all have any specific questions y'all wanted? I think if you approach this material similar to the way you approach CPR, it's kind of like that, right? So like a lot of more advanced conceptual stuff opposed to FDM and MSK, which was like brute memorization. So yeah, so take the disease and work backwards if you need to. That works for me. You know, start big, work small.
Out of all the out of all the material, which one did you find that you were having to use more outside resources for?
NB.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
Go
like
ahead.
Brady said, they'll like show you A, B, C, and then test you over D. And I felt there was so much stuff that I got more from like first aid or something, or something that I understood on a deeper level because I did osmosis or something like that. But I felt that more for NB then
Or
yeah.
like doing questions, knowing you don't know the answer, but like learning from the question. Like they'll give you the tracks of the brain and like ask you the lesions on the right, like they don't go into that in detail to where like in the lecture, they'll teach you the tracks, but like actually conceptualizing, like pinpointing where the lesion is, like you're
Yeah.
just going to have to do questions and just get them wrong and just be like, okay, I see what they're saying now. Like, you know, drawing the tracks out in your head. So NB is going to come down to a lot of questions for sure.
Yeah.
Anything else?
NB1 stuff comes back on NB2 and NB3 as well. So don't purge and regurgitate that stuff. They keep asking it and keep asking it and keep asking it. So if you didn't understand something in NB1 is a really tough exam. Yeah, somebody told me during ER you could do every other weekend. During DM you could do every weekend. And once you start getting into like NB2 and NB3, you can do every other day studying. If you want to do it like all term long, that's how they explained it to me. Because once you get to the psych stuff, it is very straightforward. So there's not a whole lot you have to do and sit down and actually understand conceptually because it's right on the slide and they do such a good job explaining it. Like the classical conditioning, Brenda Kirkby explains that so incredibly well. It's like if you don't understand it, like she explains it so well.
And their questions are straightforward on the test too. Like some of the practice questions are more difficult than the actual test.
And their turning point questions are so good too, because they'll sit there and they'll go through the question. Like a lot of other lectures, they just do the question, and Mandolinini doesn't even do a question. It's more like pick A or B or something like that, and he just breezes through it. But like Kirkby and
don't get stressed out with the neuro department. Everybody's going through it. It's just something you're going to have to dredge through on your own. So there is a question about the BSc. Yes. So like I've talked to people that did well, that are term threes now, that said they basically watched the videos that Lindsey and I did and went over the reviews that we had, and that's more than enough.
Yeah.
So if you could just knock those out, but understand DM's like super dense, and like you'll be like just bombarded with these pathways, and the next day you're getting a bunch more. So like just take that understand that, because it's going to be hard to study for the BSCE. Like it just is, it's hard to fit the time in. So
and ER, I liked how they set it up because they do endocrine and then they do repro, and I mean if they do that for you as well. But then in DM, they'll do like one lecture is digestion, one is metabolism, one is digestion, one is metabolism. So they popcorn back and forth. And I didn't like that because I felt like I couldn't get a good grasp on digestion before I went to metabolism and back and forth. And so I print off my lectures. I mean, you can do this on whatever app you use. I put all of digestion together and all of metabolism together. And I did the lectures, but when I was studying on my own and doing post reads, I actually took all of digestion and studied it as a whole concept. And I studied metabolism as a whole concept because, I mean, maybe you can go back and forth. I could not go back and forth. Like it was so frustrating to me. And so I had to organize it.
What about practice questions, Lindsey? We have a question about that. Where'd you get your practice questions from? Oh, where did I get mine from? I did definitely do the Socrative questions. I don't remember, to be honest with you. Where'd you get your practice questions from?
DM does have a lot of Sakai questions. And so I will say that for the lectures in DM, you have a lot of Sakai questions that they give you. So for DM, I focused on the Sakai and then of course IMCQ and ESOFT. ER, I did a lot of IMCQ and ESOFT, and that I think I got some Google Drive ones. I didn't hit that hard. And again, it's ESOFT and INCQ. I actually rarely go out to other questions.
That's what I was thinking too, actually. I pretty much,
I pretty much stay within what SGU gives us. And I just make sure that the concepts that the questions are asking, I know them backwards and forwards.
And I'll post at least, I'm sure Lindsey will too, like all the old questions, like the IEA old questions that I have.
Yeah.
But as for outside stuff, I don't think I really,
Yeah, I didn't go too much
I
into
don't
the
know.
outside stuff,
Yeah.
especially since it's so much denser in term 2 than it was in term 1. And I felt like I didn't have time to do more questions than were assigned. But somebody asked about grays a little bit ago in the chat. You do still have anatomy stuff in the grays, and it's especially when with embryo, you can figure out kind of what they want you to know for embryo. So that's good. But in my Google Drive, in each of the modules, I picked out all in the PDF version of the Grace question book. I screenshotted every single assigned question and put it into one doc. So if you want to just download those off of my Google Drive, you don't have to go and pick and choose the assigned questions. I just opened the book for the answers, honestly. But those condensed assigned questions are in there for you. But
you can use the Inkling app. I don't know if y'all are familiar with that. It's like super fast.
What is it?
Like it's an app. You don't use it?
No, I don't even know what it is.
So you put the Gray's book in the app, and then you could just do the questions interactively, and it tells you the right answer right away. Yeah, so you don't have to use the book. Yeah, it's fast. So yeah, just download the Inkling app, and then you could be at the store in line and be doing questions or whatever. I actually don't go to the store because of COVID, but you know what I mean.
But Brady, some of the questions don't exactly line up with the ones that are in the book, because I used that last term for grades, and I ended up like doing a bunch of the questions that weren't assigned, and then the ones that were assigned, I wasn't doing them. So I think you have to make sure if they have intro questions, they don't show up. So you have to like make sure the numbers are right.
So for term 1, I had done all the questions, but I think they line up right for term 2. Or at least I can't remember off the top of my head, like being like, this doesn't seem right. Like, I feel like they lined up okay. And a lot of them were repetitive. So like my schedule was like, so I didn't like going to lecture and then doing the post reads for that day in the same day. It was like, I don't want to think about that subject. So like on Tuesday, I would do Monday's lectures, right? My post reads. So then by Saturday, I was doing Fridays. Sunday, I would do questions, like do all the Socrative questions, and I would dedicate Monday to like doing the term 1 prep stuff, right? So if you could keep that order, but like my thought processes was by the time I start the next week, I want to be done. I don't want anything to overlap. So I don't know if y'all like doing the post reads of the same day. It was just like some of the, I like to do it over like a 48-hour period instead of 24. But yeah, like if you could dedicate a whole day to questions, that would be ideal. I know we're kind of going into like way far. I know y'all are like kind of focused on ER. Did y'all have any anything specific for ER?
I had a question, not really about ER, but just small group in general. Is it just like the same as term 1? A bunch of histo and then a bunch of other BS that's not important?
Yes.
Yeah, you'll also have clinical skills ones, which it's weird in the online format. It's weird in the online format. Don't give it too much. Don't stress over it too much. Don't give it too much time, because of you're not tested over it. For the OSEX, it's pretty much straightforward. So I wouldn't stress too much about that. But histo, we still have the histo ones. There were more clinical case ones in term 2 than there were in term 1. Term 1 was a lot of histo ones, I think.
I found the neuro small groups helpful because they kind of went into a little bit more detail about the cranial nerves and stuff. But yes, I would like highly recommend you split up the work, whatever, do it how you need to do it, just get it done, and then go to lab and like learn it there if you need to learn it. You know what I mean? Like don't waste too much time on it. It's a lot of busy work. A lot of it's too detailed for the test,
Yeah.
Also, for y'all's lab exam, because ours, I know we were all like what just happened? Like our average, I'm pretty sure was like a 70 or something. It was so low and everybody scored so low. Was y'all's like that, or was it better?
We all did good. Me and all my
It
friends
was
did like
straightforward.
better than their average. Yeah, a lot of it came from like the lab quizzes that they post that you can do like a million times. It all came from that. But like we didn't have like MSKs the whole body. Like I don't even know what was on. We didn't have it for term one when we came. We didn't have the lab exam, so we couldn't talk about it. But ours wasn't like term two is not really heavily anatomy based. You know, so I think y'all will find that a lot easier. Like our average was really high, or at least from the people I talked to. And the OSCE or OSEX was pretty straightforward too.
Yeah, I did really well on both of those exams, and I didn't dedicate too much time to studying for either, but it was very straightforward. And like Brady said, term two, you don't have a lot of anatomy stuff at all. You'll have one lab per module, but even that's not too bad. So it was really straightforward for us. And I think it also depends on the professors and course director. And so it might have just, it depends on who's writing it, I guess. But yeah, MSK was very extensive. And so I can see how it would have been a little more intensive or difficult because you're covering the whole body and then you have the cardio stuff. So, but it's not much in term two.
My grandma's here. I'm gonna get fussed at, so I need to go say hi real quick. I'll be right back.
Oh my goodness. Anything else? No. You guys excited for term two? You're dreading term two? I liked it better than term one, honestly, for some reason.
Can you hear me, Lindsay?
Yeah, and now I can.
Okay, perfect. Are you and Brady gonna do the weekly reviews for each section?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
We talked about having like, for example, Saturdays being term one and Sundays being term two, and then having a set time every weekend so that like you can put it on your schedule and we can put it on our schedule and it's just recurring.
And the caveat is we don't really know how dense. I mean, like we've heard term four is like crazy. So we're going to do our best, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, regardless of what happens moving forward, like y'all can reach out to us. Like I have people screenshotting practice questions and sending them to me and say, hey, I don't understand this. Can you help me out? So even just something as simple as that, like don't hesitate to reach out for that stuff. But we will, to the best of our abilities, try to do those weekend review sessions to help you guys, and it helps us too, because we're getting closer and closer to STEP. So
yeah, same. Y'all could send me questions too. I don't mind looking at them either. It's no big deal. I don't know, like short-term stuff. Like I guess we pretty much covered the ER.
Yeah.
I think y'all will probably like endocrine more than repro. It's just kind of how it is.
I liked endocrine more than repro.
It's pretty straightforward. It's kind of a downstream effect, negative feedback, and if you get the hormones down, it'll kind of go over to reproduction too as well. So
yeah, it ties in really well. But I think the hardest thing in repro was the pregnancy stuff, the changes during pregnancy, and the hormone chart. I'm pretty sure I got those right on the exam, but I remember I really had to look at that hormone chart for a while to know the timing, and then the follicular versus the luteal phase. And you have to know like the time frame. You have to know which hormone is highest at which point, and then how that also correlates to the histology. And so I remember one small group we were going over something and I thought we were talking about something else, and so I just kind of was talking about it, and afterwards I realized that it was different, but it went along kind of the same, and so I didn't sound like a complete idiot when I was trying to talk about it. but you do need to be able to identify the different phases of the cycles with respect to histo, and then match that up to your understanding of the hormonal levels at that time. So when you go through that, make sure you can line all of those concepts up together and you can understand it as a whole picture instead of different objectives kind of spaced out.
And I thought, like, if you don't want to necessarily pre-read, like if you go to first aid and like say you're doing like, you know, the pituitary gland, and just go look at the 2 pages for that and the hormones that come from it, like before lecture, you know, like I would pull out, I think I did this for y'all last term too, or shared it with y'all, like I would pull out the specific pages from first aid. So when I go back and look at it and just have those separately, when I go back and look at it, I wouldn't have to like thumb through the pages. But if you have that open during lecture, or look at it before, or have it open when you post read, it's kind of like a big picture that you can see. Because like last term, some professors are better than others or worse than others. Some lectures are just going to be like, you know, you're going to have to go figure it out on your own.
Yeah, there are a couple of those where it's like just figure it on in your own kind of thing. And that's where I would use my upper term friends and my tutors, like, hey, can you help me kind of hone in and like focus my study efforts, because it gets a little frustrating when you don't really know out of, you know, these 30 to 50 slides. And that helped me say, okay, this is really important versus this, you know, is not so much tested, because a lot of those lectures at the end of the module, they'll only have like 2 questions that you're going to get on the exam. And so knowing how to pick out what you should focus on is really important, because if you have 30 slides and only 2 questions are going to come from those slides, it's a little frustrating. So I've actually had this question so many times, where do I find my tutors? So one of my tutors was my term 1 AEP facilitator. Another one I serendipitously met on the island through a friend. Sometimes I'll just reach out to somebody whom I know is, you know, has a reputation for being a good tutor, and I'll just personally reach out to them like I've never met them before, but I'll just Facebook message them as like, hey, would you be willing to meet with me a couple times? And most of the time they'll say yes. So that's how I find them.
And so DES,
you have to take the initiative.
Yeah, so you contact DES, they could set you up. Also, IEA is going to offer them. We're setting that up right now, like IEA. So if, first of all, the people that did get an A or honors last term, we're going to send out the IEA signups shortly, maybe I think the first day of classes, so y'all could sign up. But one of the requirements, or one of the things that IEA is going to do, is offer tutoring. We'll do that a couple of times, but we're trying to work out all the details as of right now. So that's another place you could reach out to. Anything else?
I mean, even if y'all just have a lecture that you come across that you don't really know how to focus your efforts. I mean, I'm pretty sure Brady could say this as well. I don't mind if you reach out to me. It's like, hey, can we Zoom for like 10 minutes and you just tell me how to focus my efforts on this one particular lecture? Because sometimes it really is, you look at a lecture and either the lecture is super difficult or you're just having a day. Like I get like this sometimes. I'm just in a headspace where I'm looking at a lecture and I have no idea what to do with this lecture. If you have one of those days, like you can reach out to me and say, hey, Lindsey, can we just do this for like 10 minutes and you tell me where to focus? I'm like, yeah, sure, let's do it. Sometimes that helps me immensely, just focusing my efforts, and I'm able to kind of calm down, take a deep breath, and like, okay, I'm ready, I can study this, and just kind of mental and moral support there.
So there's a question about tutoring. I'm not exactly sure how it works for individual tutors. I assume they set it up for the whole term. Like I said, for IEA, we're still trying to iron out the details. We got to see how many people actually are going to be in IEA, for each term, and then we're going to break down the tutoring.
SGA has a study buddy locator too, if you want to sign up for that.
And look, here's a positive here. Like if you made it through last term doing this online thing and like you were able to adjust and get the term through, like that's a huge step.
Yeah.
Like Like you should be proud of that. And
Yeah.
the idea of being able to do this, like there was so much logistics into last term, figuring everything out. So if you're here now doing this, then you're ahead of the game already.
Brady and I can't even say that, because Brady and I met face to face on the island, and a lot of the friends that we have, a lot of the WhatsApp chat groups that we've made are because we met these people on the island and we had to transition. So we don't even get to say what you guys get to say is, we started medical school online. And so that's a huge thing, like having, from day one to the last day of your last exam, that's a huge thing to have accomplished. So just getting to this point in term 2, that's a really good thing.
Yeah. Where's the study buddy located?
They are on multiple Facebook pages, I believe. I know our VP of communications just posted it into the January 2021 page. I will see if she will post it to all of the pages so that everybody can have access to it. But yeah. If you're in SGA, it's on the reps page, but.
Oh, there we go. So hopefully we go back next term, huh? We're gonna party so hard. I just want y'all to know.
Oh, y'all seeing Brady dancing on the tables at the brew.
Stop it. It's not funny. It didn't happen. There's no proof.
My favorite
there needs to be some
memory.
records of this, okay?
Actually there is, but you don't have access to it. I was unaware I was being recorded, but that's okay. It happens to the best of us.
We're being recorded, so I won't say one of my favorite Brady memories. But
we will not do that. But anyway, yeah. So, any other questions regarding this stuff? I mean, well, obviously, as we go, we can answer questions.
Yeah.
Does week 1 pick up pretty fast?
Does week 1? I have no idea. I don't remember. I'm sure it does.
No,
it doesn't.
The term. If you're comparing it to term 1, absolutely not. Oh my goodness. Term 1, they throw you into the deep end in week 1. Yeah. Term 2, I felt it started off pretty slow with respect to week 1. There's not a whole lot of DLAs. The information is kind of introductory. Don't gloss over it by any means, but it wasn't as intensive as week 1, term 1.
Yeah.
At all.
And y'all have, like I said, y'all have a good understanding. Like y'all kind of understand what works for you now. So like we're not super concerned with y'all like we were last term, or like getting started. It's such a different jump.
Yeah, y'all have kind of figured out SGU. And...
Yeah.
Hey.
Oh.
You have a question?
I think his thing's on. His.
Oh.
Yeah, okay, is it that there's only one DLA in the first week and then maybe there was like a lot for the third week or something? I can't really remember.
Yeah, there's one week where I think there's a lot more, like disproportionately more.
Yeah. What's a good thing is like if you look ahead, like the neuro stuff, there's a ton of DLAs, but they're like 2 pages.
Yeah.
So like, if they do look ahead,
it's so repetitive. It's so repetitive, the NB DLAs. Yeah. I'm like, you did not need a DLA for this. So like, and for example, NB5 has like an absurd amount of DLAs associated with it, but all of the DLAs are so short and repetitive. Yeah, endocrine, hardly any DLAs. Like I said, endocrine, I feel like is easier to get down a little bit. I mean, you still have to work at it, but
it'll be the easiest part. Yeah, for the term. Yeah, for sure.
So our term 1, our classes were at 1 p.m. and our small groups are at 8 a.m. So they weren't evening, but they were afternoon.
Yeah, that's going to be an adjustment. I'm sure y'all know now that we have afternoon classes, everybody.
Yeah, I mean, ours are at 2 for Brady and I in Central. So it's 2 to 4. I don't know what everybody else is. If you're on the West Coast, it's like noon.
Is the trend that students do better in term 2? I think it's probably about the same. Like
I think it's about the same.
the difficulty's a little bit harder, but you've adjusted a little bit too,
Yeah.
right? So like you've kind of figured out what works for you. And
I
you're
agree
going to
with that
find that
statement.
a lot of stuff is an elaboration on what you did in term 2.
Yes.
Like, so if you understood it in term 1, you kind of just go on a few steps further.
I agree with that. And it matches up really well too. So when they're doing FTM, you're going through ER and some of it, because it's going to match up. And then when they move on to MSK, you're doing stuff that's very MSK like. And then when they move on to CPR, doesn't match up as much. But towards the beginning of the term, you'll realize that you're doing something at the exact same time the term 1s are doing it. You're just doing it at a different level.
What would you recommend us do in the next few days before classes start?
Well,
I liked Maniac on Netflix. I don't know. You have to get through the first 2 episodes and then it gets really good. I wouldn't do anything personally. It's, but if you want to get started.
If you want to do stuff, you could, like on Tuesday, you could post read Monday stuff. But like I said, the endo stuff that you start out with isn't too intensive and it's not that much. And so you're not going to feel this sense of urgency in week 1 to get everything done, which might actually be a disservice because then you get complacent. So you might just want to hit it hard from day 1 so you don't, I don't know.
I'll have Chill a Pillow on the first day. That's funny.
I have
Yeah,
a
The
quick-
Boys. Watch The Boys. Season 2 is really good.
Yeah, don't do anything before Monday. Don't do
Maybe
anything
just,
before
yeah,
Monday.
If anything, just set your schedule up. Get everything down.
Set your
that you wanna
schedule
do.
up, mentally prepare. Don't do anything before Monday. Even Monday, like I feel like the lectures on Monday are going to be so straightforward. It's not that bad.
I have a quick question.
Mhm.
So both of you did OPLG. How hard was that balancing?
Some weeks it's harder than others.
Yeah, for sure. I dedicated a whole day to it, but that counted as my BSCE prep too.
Yeah.
So like one afternoon or like after classes, one day was dedicated to like prepping, but the act of prepping all the slides was my way of studying.
Yeah.
So like it just
Did you guys just recycle or did you make your own questions for your groups?
I made my own questions.
Oh,
yeah,
cool.
either that make your own, like I made some of my own questions or I modified the ones from whatever, from a book or from old IMCQs. Yeah.
I also like making my own materials because then I know it really well.
It just takes longer to do it that way. So.
Yeah, it definitely does take longer. There would be some weeks where, now of course, if you're signed up to do AEP, it's weekly. PLGs, you can kind of do it on your own terms, which I like better.
I asked the question and I got kicked out. Sorry, could you go over it again?
No worries. Yeah, I just said for the PLGs for prepping, like I dedicated one day out of the week to do it. So that was my way of studying for the BSCE. So when the BSC came around, I really didn't have much to do. Like I was kind of, because I just did it. I just taught it. So it was basically a day out of the week or an afternoon out of the week.
I would do the same thing. But if I had a session early in the week and one later in the week, I would reuse the earlier questions, but I would add stuff because of course, later in the week, you would have gone through more lectures. And so you do have to sit down and make sure that you can, that you're keeping up with the material. But I did what Brady said. I would sit down one afternoon, one day and dedicate time to it because it does take some time to prepare. Like you can't sit down last minute and prepare unless you're just doing a review and you're planning on going through slides and say, this is what you need to know. This is what you need to know. Because when I was in term one, I definitely attended some PLGs that were like that. It was just, okay, this is what you should focus on. I personally like more question based because I feel like I learn a lot. So if you do the question-based sessions, it will take a little time to prepare, because you also want to be able to explain it. Because like I would get asked questions and it's not a topic that I really looked at very long, because I didn't write a question on it. And I would have to go back to my notes and it's like, oh, I don't know the answer because I didn't look over it really well. So you just kind of have to set up, okay, am I going to do questions or am I going to do a review? And if you do questions, yeah, it's going to take a little time.
But it'll force you to study for the BSCE. That was the, that's what ended up turning out. So yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Do y'all have anything else? If not, then I don't know. Good luck on Monday.
Yeah.
We'll post everything if you want to look back at it or work logged in late or anything.